domains, but we've got further a conversation to dig down on what's really happening in terms of global supply and demand. So I'd like to hand over now for a panel. I'd like to introduce a dear long-term colleague and friend of mine, Elias van Herwaarden, who is Head of Location Strategy at Colliers. Let me hand over to you, and if all the panelists could please stay on video, that would be great. Elias.
Thank you very much, Carrie, and good morning, good afternoon, good night to the world. Amazing, I think that's the right word. It's the word that popped up through presentations. Jimit showed like we have like more a 10% year-on-year increase in revenue, both in the more traditional BPS and in IT. Amazing. If you look at the data of Financial Times, and they report on job creation, it's not a perfect database, but probably the better one that's out there, and many of us use them. It shows that job creation by GBS-like activities globally in 2021 was at the level of 2019. So what COVID crisis were we talking about, at least in terms of job creation? Amazing. That's also the word that popped up last week. We had a big conference, around 75 BSCs gathered, and the unanimous feeling was that we're going to see an amazing 5 years ahead of us with a lot of opportunities, because businesses will increasingly continue to push business or operations, processes, activities into their middle office and back office. There will be challenges. What about employee experience and how to balance that against customer experience? There will be challenges related to skills, and I really embrace GT&BSC for organizing this event today, because talent shortages will be something that need to be faced. And also there's another challenge. Just imagine that the industry continues to grow headcount year on year by 10%. If the industry would employ around 10 million globally, we need 1 million people joining our ranks. And we have been talking a lot today, and we see great examples of how organizations, nations work on the talent base. But the real bottleneck, if you need 100 people joining, you need like 10 people with 5 to 8 years experience that can actually help the transition, that can give job postings, on-the-job training to other people joining. And if I might start to tackle that problem by going to Anthony in Kuala Lumpur, you mentioned a couple of the schemes. KL is doing very fine as a BS center, and there are more opportunities in Malaysia that you shared with us. But exactly in that area of upskilling the team leaders and the managerial levels, can you tell us what the challenges and the solutions are that we can learn from Malaysia? Over to you.
Yes, thank you very much for putting the question across. So when we undertook a research with the employers, and of course I will talk about the academy as well in a short while, we realized that there was a significant demand, right, in the last 2 years particularly, and of course ongoing basis. And there was a significant gap in the team leader and management group, right? As you're progressing, you had a significant volume for the entry-level staff across all the 8 domains. But we realized that the need for managerial talent and team leader talent was increasing as the scale of organizations were moving up. So there are 2 options out there. One, for the organizations to begin to make the change to develop their own career pathway programs, right? And then on the other hand, we also realized that it was a collective problem. It was not just one organization. Even if you're a provider or if you're a captive, the challenges went across board on sites. So hence the reason why we worked together with them, and the academia and the industry association came together to put together all our minds in terms of how do we develop a framework that can help us address a common problem across the industry, right? So across all the 8 domains, we realized that while there is a need to address employee experience, employee engagement, employee development, employee attraction, employee retention. So all of this kind of connected back to the framework, right? So by charting a path for each of the domain, we realized that if you start in any one of the functional areas or domains, customer experience, for example, and then you build a journey. If you are in a contact center, if you're in a BPO, if you're on an ITO, if you're on a KPO, you're able to bridge all of that together and then allow them not only grow vertically, but also the chance of them moving into another domain and then laterally developing their skills. And by way of which we realize that we give more opportunities for the individuals rather than them leaving companies and joining other companies. So more of a career redeployment, career transition within the organization where they're able to build their career pathways together. So that became the foundational framework, which we have shared across all the employers. And what we did with that message was we took that to the academia. We wanted to make sure that they were able to meet the gap of producing the talent related to the respective domains. Now, there's two channels to this. If we wait for the graduates to come up, it takes time. But we also wanted to look at upskilling and reskilling of professionals who can shift the gear, right? And then co-pilot their career journey into the respective domains. So that allowed us to address the gap on a faster basis rather than taking that regular route of 3 to 4 years before they graduate and they move up, right? So these two kind of
hang on. Sorry for interrupting, Anthony. And I know we could speak all day about this, but I'd like to understand how it happens in these other highly successful regions. And we cannot cover them all. There's so many great examples that we've heard from, but I'd like to move over to Egypt. Amani, Egypt has been really breaking all records. Not only in a numbers game, but also in terms of the breadth of the services that you're providing. You also mentioned that you have decided to focus on select areas. And I don't see, you are on screen. Thank you very much for joining the conversation. According to the rich experience that your organizations and you as a person have, is a part of the talent problem that companies are looking for the wrong stuff in the wrong place, or they're trying to do the wrong stuff in the wrong place. You mentioned you are focusing on niche. Could you tell us, what can we learn from the Egyptian example on being selected, and why are you selected?
Okay, so just let me, I think, reiterate the niche product, because what I didn't want to mention that is the whole strategy exercise mentioned that we should go on mass hiring, because as well, we are 100 million plus population. So we have to go with mass hiring and mass employment part. So that is the base of the pyramid, if I may say so. The niche areas are the tip of the pyramid. So what we're doing as a strategy outcome, we're training and upskilling another 215,000 graduates for the coming 5 years on different areas. However, we realized here that in Egypt, we do have an abundant talent pool, as I mentioned. 600,000 graduates annually is already a big amount that we can leverage on. There's no point of starting from scratch. However, we realized that we need to make sure that we are ready for the job market. It is the technology that's moving faster, probably. The companies are requiring very advanced skills that maybe some of the graduates have not picked up entirely in their 4 years of study in the universities. So what we have catered for in programs, and as mentioned that, we've done the massive online open courses with the MOOC training, with the Future Work is Digital, and with other programs. We have Next Technology Leader and so on with major providers like Udacity, Coursera, Udemy, and others. However, we have as well made sure that we know the gap. So we understand what the companies are looking for, and this is what we're currently doing now. With all of the new incentive program being launched, we have now a lot of companies who are willing to do reinvestments in Egypt. So what's happening is that we're studying more of what their demand is, as I think mentioned previously in one of the speakers. We need to address the demand in order for us to cater with a supply that matches that demand. We have a lot of jobs and we have a lot of people seeking jobs. So I just think that it's the match that, as you mentioned, that is missing. And that's why we took all the requirements, as I said, from the companies. And this is where the strategy exercise actually catered for all of these pillars. So we had different pillars to cater for: the mass hiring, which is the contact center jobs and the corporate services jobs and the custom application development and management, and it'd be some of the niche areas like the embedded and the ER&D. So we catered for all. We have programs now for all of those spectrums and all of those specific areas that I mentioned, not only the niche areas. However, as I said, some of the companies, for example, will be requiring some technical skills with the language pitch. This is where we might need to do some tweaking of the language. It's easier to teach languages to the people in the art schools and so on. However, with the technical schools, some people, we just need to uplift the language level in order for them to be ready for the global job market.
That's a perfect example. Let's stay in the same continent and take the flight south, way up to Cape Town and Pretoria. South Africa, second largest GBS cluster that we have in the African continent. Very versatile, more customer services in Cape Town, more GBS finance and IT in Joburg. Traci, you've got such a huge unemployment ratio. You've got such a wide talent pool. And you have a very diversified product. Looking from the corporate side, which is the only side I know, I would think I would need to make my choices. But what can we really expect from BPESA in capitalizing on the human capital potential in your country? What will be your focus points? You got 3 minutes, because if not, Ferry's going to kill me.
It's a great question, Elias. So if we focus on what is the potential, so our biggest thing that we have is our talent pool itself, is our youth. That is definitely what we're pitching to the global community, that we have engaged, empathetic, quality youth individuals that really want to support, want to serve, want to get engaged with supporting the local market and the international market. And this is coming through from our clients, actually, just saying how they're engaging with the staff that they have in their centers. And often when we have champion challenger situations where a client will have their own onshore contact center and then be offshoring to South Africa, South Africa is actually ranking higher than the onshore centers from an NPS perspective, from an SLA perspective, from a customer service perspective. One of the things that we're very conscious of, though, is not heating up any one area. And Kerry rightfully said a little bit earlier that any perception that any one of our regions is overheated and overtraded, Cape Town being the most mature of our BPO markets, then looking at our fastest growing market, which is a province or a state known as KwaZulu-Natal. You mentioned Johannesburg, which has the majority captive or local domestic players. And right now I actually find myself in the tier 2 environment called Eastern Cape. So we have an abundance of skills spread across the country, and it's really about how we help support getting BPOs and corporate clients actually spreading themselves across the different regions that we have and not all setting up in one area. Being conscious of this, we want to make sure that we do have that skill supply chain that will help support the growth that we're seeing, making sure that no one area falls over, making sure that we're not driving up cost, because we're very conscious of that. The fact that there's a shortage of skill in our source markets, and we know that a lot of the growth markets like Malaysia, Egypt, South Africa are seeing growth and opportunity. We want to make sure that we don't let any one region or area fall over, which is why we have phenomenal initiatives where BPOs and organizations and our different regional teams and bodies are literally taking the jobs to the people. We are setting up in our township environments, which are the underserved communities that we work with, rather than making sure that those individuals are having to commute and travel to the jobs, which has an impact on the salaries that they're getting. So there's a lot of initiatives that are beyond actually just the skills and the training. It's making sure that infrastructure is built up, making sure that more jobs can be done at home because we're laying out cable and fiber, etc. But it's really just about how organizations are engaging with the skills that exist here, making sure that we are continually recruiting and supporting growth from within an organization so that we can pull these skills that we're training and backfill into organizations. So there's a lot of...
Okay, and like I promised, we cannot cover it all, and it's great material, and then invite the audience, reach out to these great panelists. Before we close, let's again get on our flight and head east, really, or west actually, I'm on the wrong time zone here. Let's go to Ninoshka, Guatemala. Looking around you, there are some great competitors out there that are better known. Think of a Costa Rica, think of a Colombia. So what is the unique talent strategy? Because you need to fight with people that are ahead of you, which sometimes is an advantage. Look at Lithuania. They were way behind Poland, and now they're doing much better in the sense of attracting value-adding services. What's the key talent strategy going forward? If I need to tell my clients, corporations, you've got 1 minute, please. You're on mute. That I will not take that. You've got 1 minute from now. There is no connection. Let me get back to your, can you hear us? Okay, Ninoshka, I will come back to you in a second, but let me just go north from Guatemala. Debi, long time that we saw each other live, good to speak again.
Yeah.
Looking at that humongous country, you guys got it all. Yet I was in San Diego only 3 weeks ago, and economic developers, site selection consultants, they were all overstressed, overworked, in the sense that the economy actually at this time seems to be doing quite well. How can American companies, the service providers, survive? What should they keep in the United States, given the talent? And what, and I'm not popular, but I make my living of it, what is it that they should nearshore or offshore? You got 1 minute.
No, that's a really, really interesting question. And one of the reasons being part of GT&BSC is so valuable, because hearing everybody else's story and connecting with everyone, we get a much better understanding. You know, when outsourcing started, they'd say, you know, keep your core competency and outsource the rest. I think it depends on what you're looking at. The talent and some of our large service providers who are members of IAOP are doing incredible work. Colliers is a perfect example of innovating constantly when we talk about the future of work. So specifically, I think it really depends on where they are in kind of like the whole life cycle. But we've got to be thinking about impact sourcing. And I know it is something I harp on, but I feel very strongly about, because it's not just outside the US. And we are a great partner with BPESA, and they're doing amazing work. And so are so many across the world, and we should all be considering this. It's in our own backyard as well. So understanding what's out there, what companies, and we talk about San Diego, and there's areas in California that have the lowest and the highest poverty rate, lowest income, which is incredible in a country in like state like California. And some of these companies are working with the underserved in those areas. So look at this. This is the thing, is the talent is out there. We can help develop it. We can mentor these students. We can do all of this to create it within our own country and work with others outside. So that's really, to me, what I see as the #1 focus, not specifically what you're outsourcing, but where are we working all together to find the talent, build the talent. And you know, Atul Vashit, who is the CEO of Supply Wisdom, he's got all of that at his fingertips to kind of help us know where it all is and what we should be looking at. So in a nutshell, that's kind of it. What's in our own backyard? Let's develop it. Let's find it. Let's work with these amazing companies that are doing such great work, and these amazing countries that are doing this great work. So, you know, for me, that's the whole thing.
I love it. I like to chip in. Like when COVID started, there were people out there that predicted that our industry would be dead. Hey, I think we're back with a vengeance. And indeed, we've solved bigger problems before. We'll tackle this one. Just to close, Ninoshka, are we okay? Are you okay with your microphone? Can you tell us?
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, superb. Buenos dias.
Okay. Okay, buenos dias. For me, it's really early. So going back to your question, I think that really the differentiation among us and the countries around us cannot be great and in scale, but it's important understanding that what has happened in the country is that the same logos have increased from 13,000 to 46,000 employees in the past years. And this has to be because the region has overachieved the goals of the industry. We have really great workers in our industry, and I think it's based in the talent pool, really appreciating the jobs that the outsourcing industry brings. So for our kids as an impact sourcing strategy, it's really important to get a job in our industry because it changes their lives. So they really appreciate working. They put everything in it to overachieve. And that's why the companies stay here. I mean, we outperform other regions 10% or more. And when you do that and you are outperforming the other regions that are just next to you 10% or more, your revenues goes up. The client is happy and all the metrics are being met. And that's enough for the companies to invest in the project like we have and to ramp up in the same country instead of flying 30 minutes from Guatemala, you know, because we are really close to other countries. So I think the reality speaks for itself. Yeah.
And this is wonderful. I wish we had more time. I think I can close with exactly the same word that I started with. Amazing. It's amazing what you ladies, guys are all doing. And Ilia, I apologize, but we'll have to do a Bulgaria focus session another time. I think it kind of echoes what I heard in Warsaw last week. We're in for a very interesting 5 years cycle. And indeed, counting to work with you with clients, and it will be my pleasure meeting you in person. Kerry, over to you. Thank you very much. Great panelists. Hand for them.
Okay, no, thank you all to the panelists, and thank you very much, Elias, for joining us and expertly chairing that. You're much better at the timekeeping than me. So